Ho looked up from his cutting board with confusion. He was in the middle of slicing vegetables for dinner. The kitchen was warm and filled with good smells. Nothing was wrong. Nothing was on fire. So why were the emergency lights flashing red above his head? The door to the kitchen burst open. 4 security officers rushed in wearing full suits. Their faces were hidden behind thick glass masks. They carried scanners and emergency medical kits. "Everyone stay where you are," the lead officer shouted. His voice was muffled by his mask. "Do not move, do not touch anything." Ho slowly put down his knife. His sous chef, Park Min, stepped back from the stove with her hands raised. She looked at Ho with wide eyes, silently asking what was happening. "Is there a problem?" Ho asked calmly. "Problem?" The officer pointed his scanner at the stove. The device made angry beeping sounds. "We have 3 diplomats in the medical bay right now. They walked past this kitchen and collapsed. They are being treated for chemical exposure." Ho blinked. "Chemical exposure." "Toxic fumes," the officer said, "coming from this room." Min looked at the pot on the stove. Inside, garlic was cooking slowly in sesame oil. The smell was rich and wonderful. It was the foundation of 1,000 Korean dishes. It was comfort in home and family dinners. "You mean the garlic?" she asked. The officer's scanner screamed louder when he pointed it at the pot. He jumped back as if the garlic might attack him. "Seal that container immediately," he ordered. "That is the source." Ho watched in disbelief as his garlic was treated like a bomb. Officers placed it in a special containment box. They sealed it with locks meant for dangerous materials. One officer sprayed the stove with something that smelled like medicine. "This is a mistake," Ho said. "That is food. I eat it every day. All humans eat it." The officer shook his head. "They have extremely sensitive smell organs. What you call food nearly killed them." 20 minutes later, Ho stood in the captain's office. Captain sat behind her desk, her large reptilian body barely fitting in the chair. She was a species that looked like dinosaurs but with softer features. Her scales were dark green, and her yellow eyes studied Ho with a mix of curiosity and frustration. Also in the room was the ship's human liaison officer. Her job was to explain human behavior to aliens. Lately, that job had become very busy. And in the corner, wrapped in a medical blanket and breathing through a special mask, sat. He was tall and thin with pale blue skin and large black eyes. His nose was hidden behind the mask, but Ho could see it was swollen. "Let me understand this correctly," Captain said. Her voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "You were preparing food." "Yes, Captain." "And this food contained substances that harmed Ambassador and his staff." "I did not mean to harm anyone. I was just cooking dinner." Spoke from behind his mask. His voice was weak but filled with emotion. "Captain, I must formally protest. The humans have brought weapons onto this ship disguised as nutrition. When I walked past their cooking area, the fumes entered my breathing passages. I felt like my face was on fire. My eyes produced water without my permission. I could not stop my body from shaking." Stepped forward. "Ambassador, those reactions are normal when exposed to certain human cooking ingredients. Garlic and onions release chemicals that can irritate sensitive tissues. For humans, it is mild. We actually enjoy the taste." Stared at her. "You enjoy poison." "It is not poison to us. It nearly killed me." Captain raised one clawed hand for silence. "This is not the first incident involving the human kitchen. Last month, a crew member had a medical emergency after smelling something called—" She looked at her tablet. "Kai." "Kimchi," Ho corrected. "It is fermented vegetables, very healthy." "It contains active bacteria," the captain said. "Living organisms that produce gases. Several species on this ship consider that a biological hazard." Ho felt his frustration growing. "Captain, humans have been eating these foods for thousands of years. They are part of our culture. our history. I cannot cook proper meals without basic ingredients. Your basic ingredients are classified as dangerous substances by galactic safety standards, replied. She pulled up a file on her tablet. Capsaicin, the chemical in your hot peppers, is listed as a Class 3 irritant weapon. Alcohol, which I understand humans drink for pleasure, is both a neurotoxin and a fire accelerant. Even your black pepper contains compounds that trigger our bioweapon detectors. Min had been allowed to join the meeting. She stood next to Ho, her arms crossed. So what are we supposed to eat? Nutrient paste like everyone else. That would be the safest option, said. With respect, Ambassador, that paste tastes like wet cardboard. Taste is irrelevant. Nutrition is the only purpose of eating. Shook her head. For humans, taste is very important. Food is not just fuel for us. It is culture. It is memory. It is how we show love and build community. Asking humans to give up real food is like asking us to give up part of our souls. Captain was quiet for a long moment. She looked at Ho, then back at her tablet. Finally, she made a sound that might have been a sigh. I am not going to shut down the human kitchen, she said. Made a noise of protest but continued. This ship carries 57 different species. We all have different needs, different customs, different definitions of normal. The humans have been with the galactic community for only 30 years. We are still learning about each other. She turned to Ho. However, I cannot have crew members collapsing in the hallways. We need to find a solution. What do you suggest? Ho asked. First, I am ordering a complete audit of your kitchen. Every ingredient will be scanned, classified, and documented. We need to know exactly what we are dealing with. Min groaned. That will take forever. We have hundreds of ingredients. Then it will take forever, said. Second, we will install better ventilation and containment systems. The cooking fumes must not spread to other parts of the ship. And third, Ho asked. His yellow eyes met his. Third, I want to understand. Humans are strange creatures. You come from a world that tries to kill you in 100 different ways. Your plants produce poison. Your animals have claws and teeth. Your weather destroys cities. And somehow you not only survive but thrive. You take the dangerous things and make them into food, into medicine, into art. She leaned forward. I want to know why. I want to understand what makes humans the way they are. Lowered his mask slightly. Despite his earlier anger, Ho could see curiosity in his large black eyes. The audit begins tomorrow, announced. Nurse Prill will conduct the scans. I expect full cooperation from the kitchen staff. As Ho left the captain's office, walked beside him. That went better than I expected, she said quietly. Ho nodded slowly. The captain wants to understand us. That is good. Just wait until they see what else is in your kitchen. If garlic caused this much trouble, what will they do when they find the fermented shrimp paste? Ho allowed himself a small smile. I think they will need stronger suits. Behind them, still wrapped in his medical blanket, watched the humans walk away. He had spent his entire life believing that his species was sophisticated and refined, that their sensitivity was a sign of evolution and culture. But now he wondered. Perhaps sensitivity was not strength. Perhaps the humans, with their poisoned food and planet, knew something his people had forgotten. He shook his head. That was a dangerous thought. But he could not stop thinking it. Nurse Prill arrived at the human kitchen exactly at 8 in the morning. She was a small species covered in soft purple feathers. Her eyes were large and round, and they blinked constantly when she was nervous. Right now, they were blinking very fast. She wore a full protective suit. The suit was bright yellow and made her look like a small, worried bird wrapped in plastic. In her feathered hands, she carried scanning equipment, a medical kit, and a tablet to record her findings. Good morning, Ho said with a friendly smile. Welcome to our kitchen. Prill stepped inside carefully, as if the floor might explode. Her scanner was already beeping. The air quality is concerning, she said. Her voice was high and soft. "I am detecting multiple unknown compounds." "That is probably the coffee," Min said. She was sitting at the prep table drinking from a large mug. "Want some?" Prill's feathers stood up straight. "Coffee is a stimulant drug that affects the nervous system. Cannot consume it. It would stop our hearts." "More for me then," Min said cheerfully. Ho gestured to the shelves and refrigerators. "Where would you like to start?" Prill consulted her tablet. "I will begin with items kept at room temperature and move to cold storage. Please identify each item as I scan it." The audit began with simple things. Salt was acceptable. Water was fine. Rice was harmless, which made Prill visibly relieved. But the relief did not last long. "What is this?" Prill held up a bottle of dark liquid. "Soy sauce," Ho explained. "Made from fermented soybeans. We use it in almost everything." Prill scanned it. Her scanner made an unhappy noise. "This contains high levels of sodium chloride, in concentrations toxic to 12 species on this ship. Also," she looked closer at the screen, "it is fermented. There are active microorganisms inside. The fermentation is what gives it flavor." Prill set the bottle down very carefully as if it might bite her. She made a note on her tablet: "Biological hazard, living cultures, handle with extreme caution." They moved on. Each item brought new horrors. The red pepper flakes used in Korean cooking made the scanner scream. Prill jumped backward and dropped her tablet. "Capsaicin levels are extremely high," she gasped. "This substance could incapacitate any species in the family, possibly cause permanent damage." "We put it in soup," Min said. "You put weapons in soup. It tastes good." Prill needed a moment to breathe. She picked up her tablet with shaking hands and continued. "The fermented soybean paste, registered as an active biological hazard." Prill stared at the thick brown paste with something like fear. "This contains bacteria that are still alive," she said. "Still growing, still producing gases." "That is how fermentation works," Ho explained patiently. "The bacteria break down the soybeans over time. It creates deeper flavors." "But the bacteria are alive." "Yes." "And you eat them." "Yes." Prill made a small distressed sound. The jar of kimchi broke her completely. When she opened the lid, the smell hit her like a wave. Her feathers flattened against her body. Her eyes watered. She stumbled backward and dropped the jar. Ho caught it before it hit the floor. "Careful," he said. "This took 3 weeks to make." Prill's scanner was making sounds Ho had never heard before. Warning lights flashed. Text scrolled across the screen too fast to read. This is. Prill could not find words. "The bacterial count is astronomical. The chemical compounds include sulfur, ammonia, and multiple organic acids. This should not exist. This should not be something that creatures eat willingly." "Kimchi is very healthy," Min said. "Good for digestion." "Digestion of what? Metal." Ho gently took the jar and sealed it. "Perhaps we should take a break." But the break only made things worse. When they returned, they found the storage area for preserved and dried goods. Prill discovered dried fish, salted shrimp, and something called that made her scanner shut down completely. "What is?" she asked weakly. "Salted fermented seafood," Ho said. "Very traditional, very delicious." "Is everything in your culture fermented?" "Not everything. Just the things that need to last a long time without refrigeration." Prill sat down on a small stool. Her feathers drooped. She looked exhausted and horrified. "I have scanned 47 items," she said quietly. 31 of them would be classified as hazardous materials on most galactic stations. 14 would be outright banned. 7 require special permits to transport across star systems." Ho nodded slowly. "And those are just the basic ingredients. We have not looked at the spices yet." Prill made a whimpering sound. The door to the kitchen opened. Captain entered, followed by. The ambassador was still wearing his breathing mask, but he seemed curious rather than angry today. "How is the audit proceeding?" asked. Prill stood up quickly. "Captain, I must report that the human kitchen is essentially a chemical weapons storage facility." His yellow eyes blinked. "Explain." Prill handed over her tablet, scrolled through the findings. Her expression shifted from calm to surprise to something that might have been amazement. "Vinegar is classified as a corrosive agent," she read aloud. "Black pepper triggers bioweapon detectors. Alcohol is marked as a neurotoxin and fire accelerant." She looked up at Ho. "And you consume these substances daily?" "Multiple times a day," Ho confirmed. Stepped closer. Despite his earlier experience with garlic, he seemed drawn to the strangeness of it all. "May I ask a question?" he said. Ho nodded. Why would your species develop a taste for things that harm other creatures? Why would you evolve to enjoy substances that burn and poison and attack the body?" Ho thought carefully before answering. "Earth is not a gentle world. Our planet has extreme temperatures, violent weather, dangerous animals and plants that fight back against being eaten. Humans survived by adapting. We learned to use the dangerous things instead of avoiding them." "Use them how?" "Spices that burned our mouths also killed bacteria that would make us sick. Fermentation let us preserve food through long winters when nothing grew. Alcohol cleaned wounds and purified water. The things that could hurt us became tools for survival." Min picked up a small dried pepper. "This pepper is spicy because the plant does not want to be eaten. The capsaicin is supposed to cause pain to drive animals away. But humans felt that pain and said, 'This is interesting. What else can we do with this?'" Took the pepper from Min. She examined it closely. "You took the plant's weapon and made it your food." "We took everything's weapons and made them our food," Ho said. "That is what humans do." Prill had recovered enough to continue her work. She was scanning the collection of cooking oils when she made a startled sound. "What is this?" She held up a small bottle of clear liquid. "Sesame oil," Ho said. "The scanner says it is flammable, extremely flammable, flash point below 100 degrees. We use it for cooking." "You cook with fire accelerant." "It adds flavor." Prill set the bottle down very, very carefully. As the audit continued, Ho watched the aliens process what they were learning. Prill was overwhelmed but professional, was thoughtful and quiet, and stood by the door, watching everything. His earlier fear had changed into something else, something that looked almost like respect. At the end of the day, Prill compiled her final report. The list of hazardous materials filled 17 pages. The kitchen would need new containment systems, better ventilation, and warning signs in 40 different languages. But Captain made a decision that surprised everyone. "The kitchen stays open," she announced. "With safety modifications, but open. The humans will continue cooking their food." Stepped forward. "Captain, may I ask why?" Looked at the jar of kimchi, at the bottles of fermented sauce, at the dried peppers and pungent pastes. "Because I have spent my entire life believing that dangerous things should be avoided," she said slowly. "That safety and caution are the highest virtues, but these humans take danger and turn it into nourishment. They take poison and make it into pleasure. Perhaps," she paused, "perhaps there is something we can learn from that." She turned and left the kitchen. Prill followed, clutching her tablet like a shield. Remained. He stood in the doorway, looking at the strange and terrifying ingredients that filled the human cooking space. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "I would like to try something." Ho raised an eyebrow. "Try what?" Took a deep breath. "Your food. I want to taste what you taste. I want to understand." Min and Ho exchanged surprised looks. "That could be dangerous for you," Ho said carefully. "I know." His large black eyes held steady. "But I have been afraid of danger my whole life. Perhaps it is time to learn what humans have always known, that danger can be survived, that fear can be overcome. He left the kitchen. Ho looked at Min. Well, this is going to be interesting. Min grinned. I will prepare something mild, very mild. Plain rice and clear broth, with maybe a tiny bit of salt. They laughed, but they both knew that even that simple meal would be an adventure for their alien friend. The adventure was just beginning. Captain's quarters were the largest private room on the ship, but they still felt crowded when she was inside. Her body took up most of the space, and her tail had to curl around the furniture just so she could sit comfortably. Ho stood near the door, unsure why he had been summoned. The captain had called him here personally, not through official channels. This was not a work meeting. This was something else. Please sit, said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. Ho sat. The chair was designed for smaller species, and his feet touched the floor whilst massive legs barely fit under her desk. The difference in their sizes had never felt so obvious. Would you like something to drink? Asked. Water would be fine. She poured 2 glasses from a pitcher. The water was purified and clean, like everything else on galactic ships, safe and boring. I have been reading about Earth, said. She activated a holographic display above her desk. Images appeared: mountains, oceans, forests, deserts. Your home world is classified as a Class 7 dangerous environment. Only 12 inhabited planets in known space have higher danger ratings. Ho nodded. He had heard this before. The documentation says that Earth has extreme temperature ranges, unpredictable weather patterns, seismic activity, volcanic events, and predatory wildlife on every continent. Scrolled through more images: lightning storms, hurricanes, sharks with rows of sharp teeth. It also says that your plants produce thousands of toxic compounds as defensive mechanisms. And yet, she paused, and yet humans not only survived but became the dominant species. We are stubborn, Ho said simply. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. Stubborn does not explain how your ancestors looked at a plant that produced burning chemicals and decided to cultivate it. Stubborn does not explain why your species drinks fermented grain juice that damages your liver and still calls it a celebration. Ho thought about how to answer. This was not a simple question about cooking. This was a deeper question about who humans were. May I tell you a story? He asked. Nodded. When I was young, maybe 8 or 9 years old, my grandmother taught me to cook. She was old and bent, but her hands were still quick and sure. She had survived the great food crisis in Korea when the global supply chains collapsed. For 3 years, her village had almost nothing. Many people died. Listened quietly. My grandmother did not die. She gathered wild plants from the mountains. She caught fish from streams with her bare hands. She fermented vegetables in pots she buried underground. She fed her family when there was nothing to eat. Ho picked up his glass of water. He looked at it but did not drink. When she taught me to cook, she was not just teaching me recipes. She was teaching me survival. Every dish had a purpose. Kimchi preserved vegetables through winter. Dried fish provided protein when fresh meat was unavailable. Fermented sauces added nutrients and flavor to simple rice. Nothing was wasted. Everything had meaning. He met's yellow eyes. For humans, food is not just nutrition. It is history. It is love. It is the memory of everyone who came before us, everyone who worked hard so that we could live. When I cook my grandmother's recipes, she is with me. When I smell garlic cooking in oil, I am home again, even though my home is light years away. Was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than Ho had ever heard it. My no longer exists. Ho looked up surprised. The planet was destroyed 400 years ago. A rogue star passed too close and disrupted our orbit. The temperatures became extreme. The oceans boiled or froze. Within 50 years, nothing could live there. She gestured to the walls around them. Now live on ships, on stations, on borrowed worlds. We are a species without a home. Her clawed hand touched the desk gently. I was born on this ship. My mother was born on a different ship. Her mother was born on a colony station. None of us have ever walked on Kelia. Ho felt a wave of sadness. He could not imagine losing Earth, losing the mountains and oceans and forests, losing the sky. I am sorry, he said quietly. Shook her massive head. Do not be sorry. It was long ago, but I tell you this because I understand something about your attachment to food. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small container. Inside was something that looked like dark powder. This is ground root, she said. The last plants were harvested from our as it died. The seeds have been preserved and for generations, but the original roots were dried and ground into this powder. There is perhaps 1 kilogram left in all the universe. She opened the container. A faint, earthy smell rose from it. On special occasions, families will add a tiny pinch of this to their food, just enough to taste. It connects us to what we lost, to who we were. Ho understood immediately. It is like our ancestor food, recipes passed down through generations. Yes, closed the container carefully. When the audit revealed what was in your kitchen, my first thought was that humans were reckless and dangerous. But now I wonder if perhaps you are wise in ways we have forgotten. Wise? You take the challenges of your world and transform them into strength. You do not avoid danger. You embrace it and make it serve you. That requires a kind of wisdom that my people have lost. She stood and walked to the window. Outside, stars stretched endlessly into the black. Became careful after we lost our world. We built our lives around safety and caution. We avoid risks. We plan for every possibility. And yet, she sighed, and yet sometimes I wonder if we lost something in all that caution, some spark that made us who we were. Ho joined her at the window. Standing next to the massive captain, he felt small but not weak. My grandmother used to say that life is like cooking, he offered. You need heat to transform raw ingredients into something nourishing. Without heat, without the danger of burning, nothing changes. Nothing becomes what it was meant to be. Looked down at him. Your grandmother was a philosopher. She was a survivor, same thing maybe. A chime sounded from the door. Called out permission to enter. Stepped in, looking between the captain and the chef with curiosity. Am I interrupting? No, said. We were discussing the philosophy of cooking. It was more educational than I expected. Smiled. Everything with humans usually is. There is another matter, said, returning to her desk. Ambassador has submitted an unusual request. Ho already knew what she was going to say. He wants to try human food, continued. He believes it will help him understand humanity better. He is requesting that you prepare something for him, something safe but authentic. Ho nodded slowly. I spoke with him yesterday. I was not sure if he was serious. He is serious. I checked with the medical staff. They say the attempt is not without risk, but if precautions are taken, it should not be life-threatening. His yellow eyes held a glint of amusement. I must admit, I am curious to see what happens. I will prepare something very mild, Ho said. Plain rice, clear broth, perhaps a small piece of grilled fish with no seasoning. That sounds wise, paused, but perhaps not too mild. Ho raised an eyebrow. Wants to understand humans, explained. He cannot do that if you hide who you are. Let him taste something real, even if it is gentle. Let him see why your food matters. Ho thought about his grandmother, about survival and love and the meaning behind every ingredient. I understand, he said. I will make something that tells a story. He left the captain's quarters with a new sense of purpose. This was no longer just about feeding hungry crew members. This was about building bridges between worlds, about showing aliens who humans really were. When he returned to the kitchen, Min was already preparing ingredients. I heard about, she said. I have been thinking about the menu. What do you suggest? She held up a bowl of freshly cooked rice. We start with this, the foundation of everything, simple, pure, honest. Good. Then a light soup, seaweed and clear broth, nothing fermented, nothing spicy, just clean flavors. And the main dish. Min smiled. I was thinking grilled fish, very fresh, very simple, but she held up a small bottle, maybe just a tiny drop of soy sauce, not enough to register as dangerous, just enough to show him what depth of flavor means. Ho looked at the bottle. It was such a small thing, a few drops of fermented bean liquid, but it represented thousands of years of human ingenuity, thousands of years of turning survival into art. Perfect, he said. Tomorrow they would feed an alien, and in doing so they would share a piece of what it meant to be human. The preparations began. The observation deck had never been used for a meal before. It was usually a quiet place where crew members came to watch the stars and think about home. But today, it had been transformed into a dining room. A single table sat in the center of the deck. Through the massive window, nebulas painted the darkness in shades of purple and gold. It was the most beautiful view on the ship, and Ho had chosen it deliberately. If he was going to experience human food for the first time, he should do it somewhere special. Word had spread through the ship. By the time everything was ready, nearly 50 crew members had gathered to watch. They stood in small groups around the edges of the deck, speaking in hushed voices. Some were curious. Some were worried. A few were making bets on whether would survive. Nurse Prill stood by the table with a full medical kit. Her feathers were flat against her body, and she kept checking her emergency equipment. Next to her was a portable stretcher, just in case. I still think this is a terrible idea, she said to anyone who would listen. Captain arrived with Ambassador. The diplomat walked slowly, his long, thin body moving with careful grace. He had removed his breathing mask for the occasion. His large black eyes reflected the stars outside the window. Ambassador, Ho said, bowing slightly. Welcome, please sit. Took his seat at the table. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was steady. Thank you for preparing this meal. I know it required extra effort to make something safe for my physiology. It was an honor. Ho gestured to Min, who stood ready in a small kitchen area they had set up nearby. We will serve 3 courses. All have been approved by the medical team. All are extremely mild by human standards. I am ready. Min brought the first course, a small bowl of white rice. It sat on the table, simple and pure. Steam rose gently from the surface. The grains were perfectly cooked, each one separate but tender. This is rice, Ho explained. It is the foundation of Korean cuisine, of much Asian cuisine actually. For billions of humans, it is the first food we eat as children and the last food we eat when we are old and sick. It is life itself. Looked at the bowl. To his alien eyes it probably seemed strange. A pile of tiny white grains, nothing special. How do I eat it? Ho showed him how to use a spoon, picked up a small amount of rice and brought it to his mouth. The entire observation deck went silent. Chewed slowly. His large eyes blinked. His expression changed from nervous to surprised to something Ho could not quite read. The texture, said quietly, it is soft but also firm. Each piece has its own presence in my mouth. He took another bite. There is no strong flavor, but there is depth, a subtle sweetness, a kind of warmth. He looked at Ho with new respect. This is what you call basic food. This is the simplest thing we eat. Finished the bowl slowly, savoring each bite. Prill monitored his vital signs with intense focus, but everything remained stable. The second course arrived, a small bowl of soup, clear broth with thin strips of seaweed floating in it. This is seaweed soup, Ho said. In Korea, it is traditional to eat this on birthdays. Mothers also eat it after giving birth because it is gentle and nutritious. Sipped carefully from the bowl. The warm liquid touched his tongue and his whole body shuddered. "Oh," he gasped, "oh, this is—" Prill stepped forward, alarmed. "Ambassador, are you in distress?" "No, I am, could not find the words. He took another sip. "The flavors are building on each other. The saltiness of the sea, the smoothness of the seaweed, the way the warmth spreads through my body. It is like the soup is talking to me." Ho smiled. "Food should talk to you, it should tell you a story." Drained the bowl. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from something else entirely. "I have consumed nutrient paste my entire life," he said quietly. "It provides everything my body needs, proteins, minerals, vitamins, but it never made me feel anything. It never spoke to me." He set down the empty bowl. "I did not know food could speak." The observation deck buzzed with whispered conversations. Other aliens watched with new curiosity. Some began to wonder what they were missing by eating only paste. The final course arrived. A small piece of grilled fish, pale and delicate, resting on a bed of sliced vegetables. "This is grilled mackerel," Ho explained. "A simple preparation. The fish is fresh, lightly seasoned with just a touch of salt. And," he paused, "with your permission I added 3 drops of soy sauce, very diluted. Our medical team confirmed it should not harm you." Looked at the fish. His nostrils flared slightly, taking in the aroma. "Soy sauce is fermented, correct? One of your chemical weapons. One of our most beloved flavors. It took us thousands of years to perfect the recipe." Nodded slowly. "I want to taste it, I want to understand." He cut a small piece of fish with his knife. The motion was awkward because his species did not normally use utensils this way, but he managed. He put the fish in his mouth. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. His entire body went rigid. His eyes widened until they seemed to fill his face. His hands gripped the edge of the table so hard that his knuckles turned white. Prill rushed forward with medical equipment. "Ambassador, report your status." Held up one hand, stopping her. He chewed slowly, swallowed, then he sat very still for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. That was the most intense experience of my life." "Are you hurt?" Prill demanded. "No, I am," blinked rapidly. "I am alive, truly alive in a way I have never been before." He looked at Ho with something close to wonder. The flavors, the salt, the sweetness of the fish, the depth of that sauce, they overwhelmed my senses. For a moment I could not think, I could only feel. He ate another piece. His body shook again, but he did not stop. "This is what you eat every day," he said. "This intensity, this explosion of sensation." "This is one of our mildest dishes," Min said gently. "We barely seasoned it." "Stop chewing, mildest. If you want, I can describe what a properly seasoned meal tastes like, or spicy food, or fermented dishes with complex." "No," held up both hands. "No, please, I need time to process this. I am not ready for more." Laughter rippled through the observation deck. It was gentle laughter, kind laughter. The aliens watching were not mocking. They were sharing in his discovery. Captain stepped forward. "Ambassador, how do you feel?" Took a deep breath. He looked at the empty plates, at the simple food that had changed his understanding of the universe. "I feel humbled," he admitted. "I came here believing that my species was sophisticated, that our sensitivity made us superior. But now I see that sensitivity without experience is nothing. You humans take the overwhelming and make it nourishing. You take the dangerous and make it delicious. You have turned survival into art." He stood and bowed to Ho in the human style. Thank you for sharing this with me. I will never look at humans the same way again." Ho bowed in return. "Thank you for being brave enough to try." From the crowd, a voice called out. It was the security officer, a large female with dark red scales. "I want to try next." Another voice joined in, "Me too. Can humans make food that can eat? What about my species? We need cold foods." Suddenly everyone was talking. Everyone was curious. The fear that had surrounded the human kitchen was transforming into interest, into excitement. Ho looked at Min. She was grinning from ear to ear. "I think," Ho said slowly, "we are going to need a bigger kitchen." Captain watched the chaos with satisfaction. For the first time in her memory, the crew of 57 different species was united, not by mission or duty or necessity, but by curiosity, by the simple human act of sharing a meal. Perhaps, she thought, this was what humans truly brought to the galactic community, not technology or military power or political influence. Connection. The ability to take the strange and dangerous things of the universe and make them into something that brought people together. Found Ho later, after the crowd had dispersed. "I have one more question," the ambassador said. "Ask." "Tomorrow could you add one more drop of soy sauce?" Ho laughed. It was a warm, genuine laugh. "Ambassador, by the time I am done with you, you will be eating kimchi." His face went pale with a mixture of terror and anticipation. He could not wait. 3 months had passed since the garlic incident, and the GSS Harmony was a different ship. The human kitchen had expanded into 3 connected rooms. New ventilation systems kept the cooking fumes contained. Warning signs in 47 languages decorated the doors, and every single day there was a line of aliens waiting to eat. Ho stood at his cooking station stirring a large pot of soup. The smell filled the air: ginger, garlic, green onions, and a hint of sesame. Around him, Min and 2 new assistants worked on other dishes. The kitchen was alive with activity. "Order up," Min called out. "Mild rice bowl for the table, extra mild soup for the new trainee, and," she paused, checking her list, "full-strength kimchi stew for ambassador." Ho smiled. Had come a long way in 3 months. His tolerance for human food had grown steadily, from the first taste of plain rice to his current obsession with fermented vegetables. Prill still monitored his health at every meal, but she had stopped bringing the emergency stretcher. The door to the kitchen opened. Captain entered, her massive body barely fitting through the expanded doorway. Behind her came 2 aliens that Ho did not recognize. They were clearly different species. One was short and round, covered in thick gray fur, with small eyes that darted nervously around the room. The other was tall and angular, with smooth blue skin and joints that bent in unexpected directions. Both of them looked angry. Chef said, "I need your help." Ho wiped his hands on his apron. "What is happening?" "These are Ambassador Krill of the Collective and Ambassador of the Blue Alliance. Their governments have been at war for 300 years. The furry Ambassador Krill made a growling sound. "We are not at war. We are in a state of permanent defensive readiness." The Blue Ambassador clicked his joints dismissively. "You attacked our colony ships. After you sabotaged our mining platforms. Your mining platforms were stealing our resources. Those resources were in neutral space." Captain held up one clawed hand. "Enough. This is exactly the problem. The Galactic Council has ordered your governments to negotiate a peace treaty, but after 6 days of meetings, you have made no progress. You cannot even agree on the shape of the negotiating table." Ho was confused. "And you brought them here because—" His yellow eyes held a glint of hope. "Because I have seen what your food can do. I have seen enemies become curious. I have seen strangers become friends. If anything can break through 300 years of hatred, perhaps it is a meal." Krill snorted. "You expect us to eat poison." His joints clicked in what might have been agreement. "The human kitchen is a known chemical hazard. Our doctors have warned us." Ho looked at the 2 angry ambassadors. They stood as far apart as the room allowed, refusing to even look at each other. Their body language screamed hostility. This would not be easy. I am not going to poison you, Ho said calmly. I am going to feed you. There is a difference. He led them to a private dining area behind the main kitchen. A simple table waited with 2 chairs facing each other. Sit, Ho said. I will not sit facing that criminal, Krill growled. Then stand, Ho replied. But you will not eat until you are both at this table. Something in his voice made the ambassadors pause. Ho was not being aggressive. He was not threatening. He was simply stating a fact, like explaining that water was wet or space was dark. Slowly, reluctantly, the 2 ambassadors sat down. Now, Ho said, I am going to prepare a meal for you. It will be simple and safe for your species. While I cook, you will wait here. You do not have to talk to each other. You do not have to negotiate. You just have to wait. He returned to the kitchen, leaving the ambassadors alone with their hatred. Min joined him at the cooking station. What are you making? Something universal. Ho began gathering ingredients. Rice, clear broth, simple vegetables, nothing that will trigger their biology, nothing dangerous. But, Ho smiled, but I am going to cook it with love. He worked slowly and deliberately. Every movement was intentional. He washed the rice 3 times, letting the water run clear. He prepared the broth from scratch, using basic ingredients that any species could tolerate. He cut the vegetables with precision, each piece exactly the same size. And while he cooked, he thought about his grandmother, about the meals she made during the food crisis, about how she fed not just bodies but souls. When the food was ready, he carried it to the private dining room. The 2 ambassadors sat in stiff silence. They had not spoken a word to each other, but something had changed. The hostility was still there, but it was muted somehow. The simple act of waiting together had created a tiny crack in their armor. Ho placed a bowl in front of each of them. Rice, broth, vegetables, simple and warm. Eat, he said. Krill looked at the bowl suspiciously. What is in this? Food, nothing more. Poked at the vegetables with a long finger. We do not share meals with enemies. Ho sat down at the head of the table. He did not eat, he just watched. When I was a child, he said quietly, my grandmother lived through a terrible time. There was not enough food, people were starving, dying. The ambassadors looked at him, surprised by the personal story. One day, a stranger came to our village. He was from a different region, a region that our village had fought with for generations. There was old hatred between our people. Ho gestured to the bowls. My grandmother had almost nothing, just enough rice for her own family. But she looked at this stranger, this enemy, and she saw that he was hungry, so she shared what little she had. She gave him rice from her own pot. Krill frowned. That was foolish. He could have been dangerous. He was dangerous. His people had killed my grandmother's brother in a conflict 20 years earlier. She had every reason to hate him. Then why share food with him? Ho met Krill's small eyes. Because hatred was not going to fill his stomach, and hatred was not going to bring her brother back. She chose to feed the hunger instead of the hate. The room was very quiet. The stranger stayed in our village for 3 days, Ho continued. He ate with my grandmother's family. He learned their names. He heard their stories. And when he left, he went back to his region and told his people that the enemy was not so different after all. He pointed to the bowls. It did not end all the conflict. It did not solve every problem, but it was a beginning. A single meal that showed 2 people they could sit together without violence, that they could share something basic and human, even across all that hatred. Krill and looked at each other. For the first time there was no anger in their eyes, just uncertainty. Your war has lasted 300 years, Ho said. I cannot end it with a bowl of rice, but I can give you this moment, this simple choice. Will you eat together? Will you share this food as my grandmother shared with her enemy? Krill was the first to move. The furry ambassador picked up his bowl with trembling hands. He looked at. Then slowly, he lifted the bowl to his mouth and drank. Watched, his angular face was impossible to read. But after a long moment, he picked up his own bowl and did the same. They ate in silence, but it was a different silence now, not the silence of hatred, the silence of two people discovering that eating together made them just a little less like enemies. When the bowls were empty, spoke first. The stranger, what happened to him? Ho smiled. He became my grandfather. Both ambassadors stared at him. The man who killed your grandmother's brother became part of your family. No, a man who was hungry became part of our family. What he was before the meal was not what he was after. Ho stood and collected the empty bowls. That is what food can do. It cannot erase the past, but it can create space for a different future. He left the two ambassadors alone. An hour later, Captain found them still sitting at the table. They were talking, not yelling, not threatening, talking about their families, about the war that had taken so much from both sides. It was not peace, not yet, but it was a beginning. In the main dining area, the evening service was in full swing. Aliens of all species sat together at long tables, sharing human food, was teaching a group of young how to use chopsticks. Prill had developed a taste for mild vegetable soup. Even the security officer was eating something spicy and grinning. Found Ho in the kitchen, washing dishes. The diplomats are making progress, she reported. Thinks they might actually reach a ceasefire agreement. Ho nodded, scrubbing a pot. Good. She wants to give you credit. She says you should be recognized as a cultural ambassador. Ho laughed softly. I am not an ambassador. I am a cook. I make food. Other people do the important work. Shook her head. You really do not understand what you have done here, do you? You have changed this ship. You have changed how these species see each other. All because you insisted on cooking real food instead of nutrient paste. Ho dried his hands. He looked through the window at the dining area, at the dozens of aliens eating and talking and laughing together. My grandmother taught me that food is love made visible, he said. You take ingredients that could poison or burn or overwhelm, and you transform them into something that nourishes. That is what cooking is. That is what humans do. He picked up his spatula and returned to the stove. Now, if you will excuse me, I have hungry people to feed. In the Galactic Registry, human cuisine remained classified as a chemical hazard. The warning labels stayed on the doors. The safety equipment remained in place. But on the GSS Harmony, everyone knew the truth. The most dangerous thing in this kitchen was not the capsaicin or the fermented paste or the biological hazards. It was the love. And that was something no safety regulation could contain.